Before Rome conquered Carthage on the battlefield, it first met its greatest rival in an arena far less visible, the marketplace. Carthage did not rise through legions or swords. It rose through contracts, trade winds, and an economy woven across the Mediterranean like a living network. While Rome built power through land and law, Carthage built it through commerce and capital. Their rivalry was not merely military. It was a clash between two economic visions, two philosophies of how wealth should be created, protected, and expanded. And in this quiet contest of systems, Rome discovered something unsettling. Carthage's greatest weapon was not its navy, but its economy. Long before Rome imagined itself the ruler of the Mediterranean, another power had already mastered its winds, its routes, and its rhythms. Carthage rose not from legions marching across continents, but from ships gliding over water, quietly, persistently, purposefully. To the Carthaginians, the sea was not a barrier. It was a marketplace, and every horizon was an opportunity waiting to be negotiated. Their empire began as scattered Phoenician trading stations, humble outposts built to refill supplies, exchange goods, and connect distant shores. But over centuries, these small coastal settlements evolved into a vast commercial web stretching from North Africa to Spain, from Sicily to the Atlantic. Carthage did not conquer these lands. It supplied them, and in doing so, it bound them into a network of obligation, trust, and shared profit. At the center of this network stood the Carthaginian merchant, part navigator, part diplomat, part economist. Their power did not come from swords, but from contracts. Their influence did not come from armies, but from alliances formed through grain shipments, silver mining rights, and access to coveted trade routes. In a world where Rome valued land and inheritance, Carthage valued mobility and negotiation, a different philosophy of power, born from salt water and commerce. Its ports became the lifeblood of its strength. Warehouses overflowed with tin from Britain, gold from West Africa, wine from Sicily, and precious dyes from their Phoenician ancestors. Markets buzzed with languages from across the sea. And behind every transaction was an understanding. Carthage thrived because it turned distance into advantage and diversity into wealth. This was not an empire of borders. It was an empire of connections. But with that strength came something else, a quiet tension. For Rome watched this merchant empire grow with a mix of admiration and unease. Carthage represented a new kind of power, one that could not be measured in territory. It could only be measured in influence, liquidity, and reach. And in the centuries to come, Rome would learn that a merchant empire, fluid, wealthy, and decentralized, could challenge even the mightiest power on land. For centuries, Rome measured power in legions, swords, and the steady march of soldiers across the Italian peninsula. War, to the Romans, was a physical contest, armies facing armies, cities falling to disciplined force. But Carthage introduced something Rome had never fully confronted before, an empire built not on conquest, but on commerce. And it was this unfamiliar kind of power that began to unsettle Rome in ways no enemy ever had. This chapter traces the moment when Rome first realized that Carthage's influence ran far deeper than its walls or its ports. Carthage had created a vast economic network stretching from North Africa to Spain, Sicily, Sardinia, and across the Mediterranean. Its merchants controlled trade routes, metals, textiles, and exotic goods. Its harbors overflowed with wealth long before Rome had even built a navy of its own. What Rome began to see was a rival whose strength came from money, markets, and maritime mastery, not from armies marching across land. Roman leaders soon noticed that Carthaginian wealth could accomplish things swords could not. With gold, Carthage could fund fleets faster than Rome could build them. With trade, it could win friendships and alliances without ever raising a banner. With economic power, it could influence politics thousands of miles away. The realization was sobering. Carthage's prosperity allowed it to project power quietly, invisibly, shaping the Mediterranean without shedding blood. This chapter explores how Rome struggled to understand this new form of competition. Carthage was not an enemy to be crushed in battle alone. It was a system that challenged Rome's worldview. The Romans recognized that if Carthage continued to grow economically, it could surround them with alliances, dominate regional markets, and eventually dictate the terms of power itself. Thus, before a single sword was drawn, the rivalry between Rome and Carthage began in ledgers, trade agreements, shipping lanes, and economic influence. The first battlefield was not land, it was wealth. This chapter reveals how that awakening reshaped Roman strategy, ignited suspicion, and laid the foundation for a conflict that would escalate far beyond commerce to become one of the greatest struggles in ancient history. The Punic Wars are often remembered as clashes of armies and famous generals, but beneath every battlefield lay a deeper struggle, a war of wealth, resources, and economic endurance. This chapter reveals how Rome and Carthage discovered that gold could strike as powerfully as any sword, and that control of trade routes could decide victories long before soldiers met on the field. As tensions escalated, Carthage entered the conflict with a unique advantage, a treasury fueled by global trade. Its ports connected Africa, Spain, and the Mediterranean, allowing it to fund fleets and hire skilled mercenaries on a scale Rome had never confronted before. Carthage's wealth gave it flexibility. Armies could be raised quickly, ships could be built fast, and distant allies could be bought through payments rather than promises. Hannibal's legendary campaigns were made possible not simply by military brilliance, but by the financial engine of an empire built on commerce. Rome, meanwhile, began to understand that the war would not be won by strength alone. The Republic had no choice but to adapt. It learned that economic capacity, taxation systems, access to grain, the ability to finance long campaigns would determine survival. Rome built fleets by borrowing, taxing, and mobilizing its citizens, transforming its economy into a wartime machine. Even when defeated, Rome could rebuild, not because of luck, but because its civic structure allowed it to extract resources indefinitely. This chapter highlights key moments when economics silently shaped fate. Cities surrendered or switched sides when Carthage cut off trade or Rome blocked ports. Alliances shifted based on who could offer better financial stability rather than military safety. Entire regions collapsed when supply routes were disrupted, causing famine, panic, and political upheaval. The true turning point came when both empires realized that economics was not just supporting the war, it was the war. Trade routes became front lines. Grain ships became lifelines. Silver mines in Spain became strategic targets as important as any fortress. Here, the story of the Punic Wars becomes more than a tale of battles. It becomes a lesson in how great powers fall or rise not only through bloodshed, but through the invisible pressures of money, resources, and economic will. When Carthage finally fell in 146 BC, Rome believed it had erased a rival forever. The city was burned, its people scattered, its memory meant to be a warning etched into history. But destruction on the surface often hides something deeper. Ideas do not burn, and the ideas Carthage left behind quietly threaded themselves into the very empire that defeated it. Rome had won the war, but in doing so, it absorbed the economic world Carthage built. In the decades after victory, Roman administrators began studying what had made their former rival so resilient. They learned that Carthage's strength had never relied solely on armies. It came from networks, commercial arteries stretching across the Mediterranean, from Spain's silver mines to North Africa's fertile fields. Rome did not abandon these networks. It inherited them. It stationed governors in former Carthaginian territories, revived the ports, and taxed the same routes Carthaginian merchants once sailed. Slowly, Rome transformed itself from a land empire into a maritime one. Carthage's influence also seeped into Rome's internal systems. The Republic had long relied on citizen soldiers and agricultural wealth, but Carthage had shown the power of financial sophistication, using credit, private contractors, and commercial guilds to move goods and money at scale. Rome began to adopt similar strategies as it expanded, developing more structured taxation systems, standardized contracts, and large-scale trade operations that mirrored Carthaginian practice more than Roman tradition. Even the grain supply that fed Rome's swelling population became tied to former Carthaginian lands. North Africa, once the backbone of Carthaginian agriculture, was transformed into Rome's breadbasket, providing the shipments that would sustain the empire for centuries. In this sense, Carthage continued to nourish the empire that had destroyed it. The legacy extended further still. Carthage had been a model of how wealth could flow without conquest, through negotiation, shipping, and distant partnerships. Rome, inspired but not restrained, blended this commercial wisdom with its military discipline. The result was a new kind of empire, one that wielded both the sword and the ledger, both force and finance. In the end, Carthage disappeared from the map, but not from history. Its stones were scattered, yet its economic blueprint endured, quietly shaping the empire that rose upon its ashes, and leaving a lesson history rarely acknowledges. Carthage lost the war, but its ideas won the centuries. Empires rise through battles, but they endure through ideas. Carthage proved that wealth is not only what a nation holds, but what it connects. Its ports, its merchants, its relationships across distant seas. Rome conquered Carthage's walls, yet it inherited its mind. The systems, the networks, the quiet power of commerce that outlives kings and armies. In the long arc of history, Carthage's defeat became the foundation of Rome's strength, reminding us that the greatest forces are often invisible, circulating like currents beneath the surface. And as you reflect on this forgotten rivalry shaped by economics, don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the hidden truths of financial history.